Okay, let's dive into this because we have an absolutely fascinating and honestly incredibly relevant topic to unpack today. I want you to think about the device you probably have sitting right next to you, or let's be real, the one that's maybe even in your hand right now. We're talking about a completely invisible biological heist taking place right inside your skull. The source material we're looking at today lays out exactly how the simple act of unlocking your phone sets off this massive cascade of chemical reactions in your brain. It is literally a biological hijacking, and the craziest part? It's happening entirely under the radar, without you even realizing it.
So I'm just going to state this as bluntly as our source material does. Your brain is being hacked. And no, that's not just a catching metaphor. Think about that little red notification bubble that pops up on your screen. You know the one, that specific color, that exact shape. Yeah, that is far from an accident. The engineers who built these platforms designed that bubble to trigger a very specific physiological response. It's literally engineered to give you the exact same dopamine spike that a slot machine delivers to a gambler sitting on a casino floor. It's a highly calculated, deliberate hack of your neurochemistry.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the direct comparison it makes to help us understand our brain's blind spot. On the left side, you've got the thrill of winning money. On the right, the social validation of getting a like on a post. Well, according to the research, your brain's dopamine system literally cannot tell the difference between these two events. No way, right? But your nervous system, they are absolutely identical. Both of these actions release dopamine into your system and both compel you to keep coming back for more. In essence, the smartphone in your pocket operates exactly like a portable slot machine, just dispensing little chemical rewards to keep you pulling the lever.
To really grasp how deeply ingrained this is, let's look at part 1, the variable reward trap, and why every scroll is a gamble.
Let's break down exactly what happens inside your brain the second you start swiping. The core engine driving this whole behavior is a psychological concept known as variable reward. Basically, it's the trick of chasing unpredictable outcomes. When you swipe your thumb up on your feed, you're kicking off a tiny gamble fueled entirely by uncertainty. You have no idea if the very next video or post is going to be totally boring, or if it's going to be the most hilarious, amazing thing you've seen all day. And it's precisely that uncertainty that acts as the hook. If you knew exactly what was coming, you'd get bored and put the phone down for sure. But because you don't know, you just keep scrolling, chasing that next unpredictable hit.
The absolute genius, and honestly the danger of this, is how it exploits a system we've had for millennia. In the ancient wild, our brain's dopamine system actually evolved to chase unpredictable rewards, because back then, unpredictable meant finding food. It literally meant survival. We are hardwired to pay intense attention to erratic or uncertain things. But fast forward to the modern digital environment, social media apps didn't invent some new psychological quirk. They simply hijacked our ancient evolutionary wiring and redirected the whole shebang to serve their engagement metrics. Your brain thinks it's hunting for survival. The app knows it's harvesting your attention.
But dopamine isn't the only chemical lever they're pulling. That brings us to part 2, triggering the alarm system and hijacking the amygdala.
We need to shift our focus to another absolutely critical vulnerability in the human brain, which is our built-in alarm system, the amygdala. Your amygdala is essentially your brain's threat detector, and it is constantly on high alert. Just look at this comparison of a calm headline versus a scary headline. When you come across content that sparks outrage, fear, or negative social comparison, it instantly lights up your amygdala like a Christmas tree. This perfectly explains why a terrifying or enraging headline will literally always get more clicks than a calm, rational one. These platforms know that if they want your immediate, undivided attention, the fastest route is straight through your biological alarm system.
I really want to emphasize this quote from our source material because it hits the nail right on the head. Your amygdala doesn't care about truth, it cares about threat. Your biological hardware isn't fact-checking your newsfeed, guys. It is desperately scanning for danger. Apps and algorithms have learned exactly how to weaponize this natural threat response. By feeding you a steady stream of alarming or outrage-inducing content, they can trigger your amygdala over and over again, guaranteeing your eyes stay glued to the screen.
Let's move to and see how this builds in part 3, the dopamine crash and the aftermath of the scroll.
Let's walk through the physiological aftermath of this vicious cycle, step by step. Step 1 is the gamble, the physical act of scrolling. Step 2 is the reward, that nice little dopamine hit you get when you see something interesting or you get a notification. But step 3 is where the trap snaps shut. That's the dopamine dip. For every artificial high you get, there is a subsequent biological low. This cycle perfectly explains why, after an hour of just mindless scrolling, you don't feel satisfied or rested at all. Actually, you feel drained, restless, and almost kind of empty.
Your brain has literally just been taken on a chemical roller coaster.
So the crucial point is what happens to your brain's baseline, because you're constantly subjecting your brain to these massive, completely unnatural spikes of dopamine. Your brain tries to balance itself out by resetting your baseline dopamine levels lower. The terrifying result of that, real life actually starts to feel incredibly boring. Because your baseline is totally depleted, normal, healthy, everyday activities like going for a walk, having a face-to-face chat with a friend, or sitting down to read a book suddenly feel super dull and understimulating by comparison.
Over time, the long-term impacts of this constant stimulation take a very real physical toll on your body. As the source material points out, this cycle constantly floods your system with cortisol, which is your primary stress hormone. And even worse, it suppresses something called BDNF. BDNF is a crucial protein your brain literally requires to grow new neurons and maintain its sharpness. So think about the bitter irony here. The exact same social feed that promises you connection and entertainment is quietly, biologically wiring your brain for chronic anxiety. It's fundamentally shortening your attention span, and it's suppressing your brain's ability to maintain its own health.
Now, after looking at all those rather alarming mechanisms, I want to shift the tone. Let's look at part 4, taking your brain back and the power of neuroplasticity.
We absolutely need to look at the optimistic, empowering resolution presented in the source material because we absolutely have the power to break this cycle. And this brilliantly illustrates the concept of neuroplasticity. As defined here, neuroplasticity is the brain's incredible ability to rewire itself and adapt to new behaviors. The absolutely great news here is that the damage from all this digital overstimulation, it's not permanent. Your brain is plastic, it's totally malleable. Just as it was wired by these apps to crave the scroll, it can absolutely be rewired back to a state of calm, focus, and baseline normalcy.
The source text makes it very, very clear. Awareness is the first and definitely the most critical step in this rewiring process. Simply understanding the mechanics of the biological heist we just mapped out is a real game changer. Once you can actually see the hook for what it is, a highly targeted manipulation of your dopamine and your amygdala, it immediately stops controlling you in the exact same way. You instantly transition from being a passive participant in this psychological experiment to being an active observer of your own habits.
Which brings us to our final thought, and a lingering question that I highly encourage you to keep front of mind. The source material leaves us with this really powerful provocation to combat the hack. The very next time you feel that phantom urge in your pocket, or the next time you find your hand mindlessly reaching for your phone during a quiet moment, just pause. Ask yourself, am I actively choosing to do this, or is my dopamine system choosing for me? By simply asking that question, you reclaim your attention, you interrupt the chemical cycle, and you take the very first step toward taking your brain back.